Good morning, tubesteakboogie.net. The Leafs played again, back-to-back situations last night. They were in Philly 2 nights ago, traveled back to Toronto for the Avalanche, who were waiting for them there. And that's always an interesting scenario when you have a visiting team waiting in Toronto for you while you come back. You're on the road and you come back to play, so they're rested. You played the night before. Usually there's a bit of fatigue involved. I don't know how much I buy that because these guys are professional athletes, and I mean, you play hockey for a living. Like it's a 60-minute game, and you don't play the whole game. So I never buy the fatigue excuse in these situations, but I'm sure it does play somewhat of a factor. But I don't think it's as big a deal as they always make it out to be. But and the Leafs kind of proved that right last night. I mean, they came out flying. The game was Colorado's been flying this year. McKinnon's on fire, and they're rounding themselves out into what some people are now considering them a serious Stanley Cup contender. So the game was like the first period was just super fast paced, hardly any whistles, tons of skill, and the Leafs really had. The play would kind of go back and forth. Like one team would have a bit of the advantage for a while, and then would switch to the other team. There was no real clear-cut winner overall. Sorry, so tired. I would say over the course of the whole game, I don't think any team had any edge over the other one. But considering the circumstances and how the Leafs have been trying to iron things out lately, I think they played a really good game. And the first period, much like the Philly game, would go scoreless. Second period, Leafs were on a penalty kill, and the Avalanche wasted no time in burying the puck. It took, I don't even know if it took half a minute, but it was or 10 seconds. Like, it was super early on the power play. Cross ice pass to McKinnon. He was left alone, and he just ripped one top shelf over Freddie's glove. Nothing much Fred could have done about that, other than just luckily had the glove in the right spot at the time it was shot. He almost got it, but with the way McKinnon's playing, that's kind of a gimme. Fortunately, a couple minutes later, Hyman did some strong work on a shift and ended up in front of the net and received a pass and just kind of redirected it in and tied things up at once. And that's the way we would go to the third period. In the third, the Leafs started strong when Muzzin took a double minor for high sticking, but the Leafs had a great killed off the double minor, and then not long afterwards went on a power play themselves, and then that's when disaster struck in the Avalanche buried a shorthanded goal that put them up 2-1, and that's kind of where things would stay. The Leafs would press and press and press. They would eventually pull the goalie, but the Avalanche popped an empty netter, and there you have it. Final score was 3-1. Again, in another game, much like the Philly game, where I think they deserved a better fate. But that's encouraging that they're playing well. They're ironing things out, and hopefully it will lead to better things, down the road here. But again, I think they're right around the 500 mark after getting some wins. So it's like they needed to start winning yesterday, right? Is I guess what they say. I needed this yesterday, and yes, they needed to start winning yesterday, because 500 hockey as you're approaching the Christmas break is usually not good enough to be a playoff team. So, but they've got all the tools. They've got the goaltending. So let's hope they can continue to straighten things out, and these strong efforts will start turning into wins and enough to make the playoffs and hopefully get out of the first round. So the only other thing to note last night is that it was Nazem Kadri's first game back in Toronto after being traded to Colorado, and of course they did the video board tribute and stuff like that, so that was nice. And it was a perfect example of, I love Tyson Barrie and Alex Kerfoot. I think they've been great additions, but them shuffling Kadri out, and the way he played against the Leafs last night is the perfect example of what that team is missing, because he laid out Pierre Engvall huge with a massive hit, and then he had a couple other pretty good hits too. And When's the last time? I mean, the Leafs finish their checks from time to time, but it's, the kind of that half-assed, oh, I'll just rub you into the boards, and it's, I may as well not have even wasted the energy doing that. Like, these are hits where these are collisions, where Kadri's not trying to just rub the guy out. He's trying to go through him and put him out of the lineup, because that's the way players like that play. And that's exactly what this Leafs team needs. So, I mean, they've got a couple of big bodies in Engvall and Gauthier and stuff like that, but they don't even need a big body. I mean, Kadri's not a big guy, but he plays like a big guy. And they need some guys like that who will put fear into the other team and make them think twice about wanting to carry a puck, over the blue line or whatever. They just don't have it. I doubt they even have any guys like that with the Marlies, but who knows. But if I was addressing this team in the offseason, or even come trade deadline this year, I wouldn't worry about. I think their roster is good enough in terms of skill and talent and compete and commitment, but they need that physical edge. They need that fear, that little element of risk the other team's going to think about when they step on the ice against that player's line or that player's defense pair or whatever. And the Leafs just don't have that right now, and that's the one thing that they are truly missing is that physical fear element. And again, until they address that, I don't think they're going to be a Stanley Cup winning team. You need that. I mean, look at last year again. It goes back to St. Louis and Boston. Both those teams had that. They had big players who could run right through you, and that's the way the Stanley Cup goes almost every year. So, but we'll see. I'm not the GM as much as I'd like to be, but we'll see how this all shapes out, and we'll take it game by game. So long.